A surprise attack and a desperate response. Screams and explosions ripped across the galaxy as the Oran Empire's barrage of antimatter torpedoes tore gaping wounds in the hulls of Earth's frontier outposts. Warships burned, flesh charred, and the light of 1 billion dead souls flickered out like snuffed candles in the void of space. It was the year 2250 AD, and Earth's remote colonies lay in ruins, victims of a devastating surprise attack. Ithorian warships, sleek and predatory, prowled the space lanes, sowing destruction at every turn. On the bridge of Earth's secret weapon, the ESS Vengeance, Commander Chris Rice clenched his fists as a high-priority transmission crackled across the screen. The ghostly visage of Admiral Shu, her face etched with grief and rage, filled the view screen. She spoke the words that Chris had long dreaded. The Ithorians were coming for Earth. Humanity's homeworld now lay square in the crosshairs, and the survival of the human race itself hung in the balance. Chris and his brave crew knew what must be done. The Vengeance, an experimental stealth warship armed with reverse-engineered alien weapons and a revolutionary warp drive, had to rendezvous with the remnants of Earth's fleet. Together, they would mount a desperate, ferocious counterattack. Chris gripped the arms of his command chair, his knuckles white, his jaw tight. He looked to his crew, the best men and women Earth had to offer. Some would never return from the battles to come, but he swore a solemn oath. Here, on the eve of war, humanity would not go quietly into the night. The Oran would pay dearly for every drop of human blood spilled. As the Vengeance knifed through the interstellar void, racing toward its fateful rendezvous, Chris whispered a prayer, not for himself, but for the billions of lives hanging in the balance, and for the Oran aggressors who would soon face the full fury of a species pushed to the brink. The genesis of the Vengeance. The Vengeance sliced through the dark tapestry of space, its experimental warp drive humming with power as stars streaked by the viewports. Commander Chris Rice allowed his thoughts to drift back to the fateful day when the Oran Empire first made contact with Earth a decade ago. The sleek Oran ships had appeared in orbit without warning, their hulls gleaming under the sun. The world held its breath as the aliens announced themselves, extending an offer of trade and cooperation. Chris remembered the mix of excitement and trepidation that gripped humanity. The Oran possessed technology far beyond Earth's capabilities, and their condescending attitude made it clear they saw humans as little more than primitives to be exploited. Behind closed doors, Earth's fractured nations came together, recognizing the need for unity in the face of this new galactic power. The Terran Defense Alliance was born, a coalition tasked with managing the delicate relationship with the Oran, while secretly working to close the yawning technological gap. Scientists pored over fragments of Oran technology, reverse engineering the advanced systems. Breakthroughs in warp theory and particle physics followed, paving the way for the development of ships like the Vengeance. In hidden facilities across the solar system, the most advanced weapons humanity had ever conceived began to take shape. Chris's reminiscing was interrupted by a soft chime from his console. The after-action reports from the colonies were ready for review. He pulled up the files, his eyes scanning the grim details. The Oran had struck with overwhelming force, their ships appearing as if from nowhere to rain destruction upon the outposts. But the reports also spoke of the tenacity and bravery of the human defenders. At great cost, they had managed to destroy several Ithorian capital ships, their sacrifices buying time for civilians to evacuate. Chris felt a swell of pride mingled with grief. The Oran commanders would be more cautious in future engagements, having learned that humans would not be cowed easily. As the Vengeance hurtled toward the rally point, Chris turned his mind to strategy. The Oran arrogance could be used against them. They would not expect the primitive humans to mount a significant counterattack. If the Vengeance could strike at the heart of their fleet, using its stealth capabilities to sow confusion and chaos, the beginnings of a plan took shape in Chris's mind. It would be a gamble, but the alternative was the destruction of everything he held dear. The Oren had underestimated humanity for the last time. The fragile remnants of Earth's fleet. The Vengeance dropped out of warp at the edge of the Orc cloud, a vast and diffuse sphere of icy debris, marking the boundary of Earth's solar system. Commander Chris Rice leaned forward in his command chair, his eyes scanning the view screen for the expected fleet. But as the image resolved, his brow furrowed. The gathering of ships was far smaller than anticipated, a mere fraction of the force he had hoped to see. "Hail the flagship," Chris ordered, his voice tight. "Get me Admiral Singh." Moments later, the weathered face of Admiral Arjun Singh appeared on the screen. The years had etched deep lines into his brown skin, but his dark eyes still sparkled with the same fierce intelligence Chris remembered from their days at the academy. "Commander Rice," Singh greeted, his voice warm but strained. "Damn good to see you, son. Wish it were under better circumstances." Chris nodded, his jaw tight. "Admiral, the fleet. What happened? Where are the rest of our ships?" Singh's expression grew somber. "The losses were worse than we feared, Chris. The colonies, the outposts, the Oren hit us hard. What you see here is all that's left of our frontline forces." Chris felt a cold weight settle in his gut. The situation was more dire than he had dared to imagine. He pushed aside the rising tide of despair and focused on the task at hand. "What's our status? Where are the Oren now?" Singh called up a holographic star map, the glowing points of light floating between them. "Our scout probes have detected a massive concentration of Oren ships here, in the new Jakarta system. They seem to be regrouping, consolidating their gains before they push onto Earth." Chris studied the map, his mind racing. "They're getting ready for the final assault. We have to stop them, Admiral. We have to buy Earth more time." Singh nodded grimly. "Agreed. Here's the plan. We'll stage a diversion near the Kuiper Belt. Try to draw out their main fleet. Meanwhile, a strike group led by the Vengeance will use the Orc cloud for cover and ambush them from behind." Chris considered the strategy, his fingers drumming on the armrest of his chair. It was a bold plan, but not without risks. "We'll need contingencies, Admiral, if they suspect a trap." "I know, Chris. We'll have backup plans in place, but this is our best shot at catching them off guard. Your ship's stealth capabilities will be key." As they delved into the details of the plan, a shrill alarm pierced the air. Chris whipped to face his sensor officer. "Lieutenant Sanderson, report." "Sir, long-range sensors have picked up an Ithorian scout ship entering the outer system. It's on a trajectory that will bring it within scanning range of the fleet." Chris cursed under his breath. If the scout detected their presence, their plan would be compromised before it even began. He turned back to Admiral Singh, his decision made. "Admiral, the Vengeance will intercept that scout ship. We can't let it report our position in numbers." Singh's image flickered as he nodded. "Agreed, Commander. We'll proceed with the preparations here. Good hunting and Godspeed." As the communication ended, Chris felt a surge of adrenaline. This was it, the moment he and his crew had trained for. Helm, plot an intercept course. Weapons, charge the particle cannons. Comm, sound battle stations. As the bridge erupted into a flurry of activity, Chris settled back into his chair, his eyes fixed on the view screen. The Oren scout grew larger as they closed the distance, its sleek hull glinting in the starlight. "This is it, people," Chris said, his voice steady. "Let's show these Oren bastards what humans are made of." The crew responded with a chorus of determined affirmations, their faces set with grim resolve. The Vengeance surged forward, ready to face whatever lay ahead. In that moment, Chris knew with absolute certainty that they would fight to their last breath to defend Earth and all she stood for. The Oren had started this war, but by all that was holy, humanity would finish it. The capture of the Ithorian scout. The Vengeance raced through the void, its hull shimmering as the advanced stealth field bent light and radiation around it. On the bridge, Commander Chris Rice leaned forward in his chair, eyes locked on the approaching Ithorian scout ship. "Lieutenant Tanaka, status on the EMP burst," Chris said, his voice calm but urgent. Tanaka's fingers danced across his console, making final adjustments to the experimental weapon. "EMP burst ready, Commander. I've calibrated it to overload their systems without causing structural damage." Chris nodded. "Good work, Lieutenant. We need that ship intact." He turned to his comm officer. "Sergeant Hawkins, your team will secure the vessel and take prisoners. Look for any high-value targets, officers, anyone who might have intel on their plans." "Aye, sir," came the reply. Sergeant Alia Hawkins' voice tiddy with anticipation. Her squad of seasoned Marines was already in position, their sleek black armor gleaming under the bridge lights. The tension on the bridge was palpable as the distance between the two ships closed to within a few thousand kilometers. Chris could almost feel the cold stare of the Ithorian captain on the other side of the void, unaware of the human vessel creeping up from behind. The moment of truth was at hand. "Execute the EMP burst," Chris ordered, his voice cutting through the silence. A pulse of electromagnetic energy shot out from the Vengeance, slamming into the Ithorian ship like a tidal wave. Lights flickered and died across the enemy vessel, its engine sputtering and failing as the EMP overloaded its systems. "They're dead in the water, sir," Lieutenant Tanaka reported, a hint of satisfaction in his voice. "Helm, bring us alongside," Chris commanded. "Prepare for boarding." The Vengeance glided smoothly to the Ithorian vessel's side, its docking tubes extending like the limbs of some predatory creature. The Marines moved with precision, breaching the enemy ship's airlock and flooding into its darkened corridors. The Ithorians, caught off guard and disoriented by the sudden power loss, offered little resistance. Hawkins' squad quickly subdued the crew, securing the bridge and engineering section. As they worked, Chris monitored the operation from the Vengeance's bridge, his hands clenched into fists. "We've secured the vessel, Commander," Hawkins' voice crackled over the comm. "No major casualties on our side. We found their captain and some officers. They're being detained in the cargo hold." "Excellent work, Sergeant," Chris replied. "Begin extracting any data from their computers. We need to know what they're planning." As the Marines set to work, Chris allowed himself a small measure of relief. They had struck a blow, albeit a small one. But more importantly, they had captured a prize that could tip the scales in the coming battle. The Ithorian scout ship would be a valuable source of intelligence, and perhaps even a bargaining chip in the right hands. "Lieutenant Tanaka, prepare to tow the Ithorian vessel back to the fleet. We'll interrogate the prisoners once we're in a secure location," Chris ordered. "Aye, sir," Tanaka responded, his fingers already moving to carry out the command. The Vengeance began the delicate operation of towing the disabled scout ship, its engines humming with power as it pulled the enemy vessel through the cold void. Chris watched the distant stars drift past, his mind already turning to the next phase of their mission. This was only the beginning. The Orin had shown their hand, but humanity had yet to reveal its trump card. With the intel from the captured ship, they could launch a counteroffensive that would send shockwaves through the galaxy. As the Vengeance and its prize sailed through the dark, Chris felt a steely determination settle in his chest. The Orin Empire thought they could crush humanity with a single strike. They were about to learn how very wrong they were. The Vengeance's gambit. The Vengeance returned to the fleet's rally point, the captured Ithorian scout ship in tow. On the bridge, Commander Chris Reyes stood alongside Admiral Arjun Singh, who had boarded the Vengeance to personally oversee the interrogation of the prisoners. The mood was tense, the stakes higher than ever. "They've confirmed what we suspected," Singh said, studying the holographic star map displaying the enemy's movements. "The Orin fleet is regrouping in the New Jakarta system. They're planning a full-scale invasion of Earth, Commander." Chris's eyes narrowed as he processed the information. The Ithorian captives had proven unexpectedly cooperative, their fear of what the humans might do to them overriding their loyalty to their empire. The details they had provided were chilling. The Auran were amassing a force unlike any seen before, a fleet capable of wiping out Earth and every human colony in the blink of an eye. "We have to hit them before they can launch," Chris said, his voice steady. "If we can take out their command ship, the rest of their fleet will be thrown into disarray." Sane nodded, his gaze hard as steel. "It's a risky move, but it might be our best shot. What's your plan, Commander?" Chris turned to the star map, his mind working quickly. "We'll use the Vengeance's stealth capabilities to infiltrate their fleet. Our goal is to get close enough to disable or destroy their command ship. With their leadership in chaos, our fleet can launch a full-scale assault and push them back." Singh considered the plan, then nodded decisively. "Do it. The fate of humanity may rest on this gambit." The Vengeance was prepped for the mission, its crew ready for the fight of their lives. The captured Ithorian ship, now rigged with explosives, would serve as a Trojan horse, allowing the Vengeance to slip into the heart of the Auran fleet undetected. As the ship prepared to jump to the New Jakarta system, Chris gathered his crew for a final briefing. The faces that looked back at him were tense but resolute. They all knew the risks, but they also knew what was at stake. "Listen up, everyone," Chris began, his voice calm but firm. "This is it. The Auran think they can wipe us out, but we're going to show them what it means to face humanity. We're not just fighting for our lives. We're fighting for every man, woman, and child on Earth. Failure is not an option." The crew responded with a chorus of affirmations, their resolve solidified. Chris could see the determination in their eyes, the fire that burned within each of them. They would not go quietly into the night. The Vengeance jumped to the New Jakarta system, emerging from warp on the outskirts of the Auran fleet. The enemy ships loomed large on the view screen, their sleek, menacing forms a stark contrast to the small but deadly Vengeance. "Commence operation," Chris ordered, his voice steady. The Vengeance and the Ithorian scout ship moved in tandem, their stealth fields masking their approach. The Auran fleet, focused on their preparations for the invasion, failed to notice the intruders until it was too late. As they neared the command ship, Chris gave the signal. The explosives on the captured Ithorian vessel detonated, creating a massive explosion that rocked the Auran fleet. In the confusion, the Vengeance made its move, unleashing a barrage of particle beams and torpedoes at the command ship. The enemy ship's shields flickered and failed under the onslaught, its hull buckling as explosions tore through it. The Auran fleet, now leaderless and in disarray, scrambled to respond, but it was too late. The Vengeance had struck a fatal blow. "Mission accomplished," Chris said, a grim satisfaction in his voice. "Let's get out of here before they can regroup." The Vengeance pulled away from the chaos, its stealth field re-engaged as it slipped back into the void. The mission had been a success, but the war was far from over. As they jumped back to the fleet, Chris knew that the battle for Earth was just beginning. But with the Auran command in disarray, humanity now had a fighting chance. The battle for Earth. The Vengeance dropped out of warp in Earth's orbit, the blue-green planet shining like a beacon of hope in the darkness of space. The Auran fleet, though battered and leaderless, had arrived ahead of them, and the battle for Earth was already underway. "All ships, engage the enemy," Admiral Singh's voice crackled over the comm. "This is our last stand. Fight like the survival of humanity depends on it, because it does." The Vengeance surged forward, joining the fray as Earth's defenders launched a desperate counterattack. The Auran ships, though disorganized, still outnumbered the human fleet, and their superior technology gave them a deadly edge. But the humans fought with a ferocity born of desperation. Earth's warships, armed with the best weapons humanity had to offer, tore into the Auran fleet with reckless abandon. The Vengeance led the charge, its particle beams cutting through enemy shields like a hot knife through butter. On the bridge, Chris Reyes directed the battle with a calm intensity, his mind focused on the task at hand. The Vengeance weaved through the chaos, dodging enemy fire while delivering punishing blows to the Auran ships. The crew worked with practiced precision, their movements fluid and coordinated. Despite the odds, the human fleet began to gain the upper hand. The destruction of the Oran command ship had thrown the enemy into disarray, and without centralized leadership, the Oran forces were struggling to mount an effective defense. "Commander, we've got a large energy signature on the sensors," Lieutenant Tanaka reported, his voice tense. "It's coming from the Oran flagship. They're charging some kind of superweapon." Chris's eyes narrowed. The Oran were preparing a final desperate gambit to destroy Earth. "Target the flagship," he ordered. "We can't let them fire that weapon." The Vengeance turned its attention to the Oran flagship, a massive vessel bristling with weaponry. As the human ships converged on the target, the Oran flagship unleashed a devastating blast of energy, annihilating several of Earth's warships in a single stroke. "All weapons, fire on that ship," Chris shouted, his voice ringing with urgency. The Vengeance and the remaining human ships poured everything they had into the Oran flagship. The enemy ship's shields flared and buckled under the relentless assault, its hull crumpling as explosions ripped through it. But the Oran flagship was not going down without a fight. In a final act of defiance, it unleashed its superweapon once more, this time aimed directly at Earth. "Brace for impact," Chris yelled, gripping the edge of the command console. The beam of energy lanced toward the planet, but before it could strike, a massive explosion tore through the Oran flagship. The human fleet's concentrated fire had finally overwhelmed its defenses, and the ship detonated in a blinding flash of light. The Oran fleet, now leaderless and demoralized, began to retreat. The human ships, battered and bloodied, gave chase, pushing the invaders back. The battle for Earth was won. On the bridge of the Vengeance, the crew erupted into cheers as the last of the Oran ships fled the system. Chris allowed himself a rare smile, relief flooding through him. They had done it. Humanity had faced the abyss and emerged victorious. But as the cheers died down, Chris knew the cost of their victory. Earth was safe, but the war was far from over. The Oran Empire would not forget this defeat, and they would return, stronger and more determined than ever. "We've bought ourselves some time," Admiral Singh said quietly, standing beside Chris. "But we need to use it wisely. The Oran will be back." Chris nodded, his expression somber. "And when they do, we'll be ready." The road to victory. In the weeks following the Battle of Earth, the human fleet regrouped and prepared for the next phase of the war. The victory had been hard-won, but it had given humanity a much-needed morale boost. Across the galaxy, humans rallied to the cause, determined to defend their homeworld and drive the Oran Empire back. On the Vengeance, Commander Chris Rice and his crew were at the forefront of the preparations. The ship, now a symbol of resistance, was undergoing repairs and upgrades, its systems being fine-tuned for the battles to come. Admiral Singh had taken personal command of the fleet, and under his leadership, a new strategy was being formulated. They could no longer afford to play defense. It was time to take the fight to the Oran. "We've analyzed the data from the captured Ithorian ship," Singh explained during a briefing on the Vengeance. "We've identified several key systems that are critical to the Oran war effort. If we can strike at these points, we can cripple their ability to wage war." Chris studied the star map, noting the locations of the targeted systems. The plan was ambitious: coordinated strikes deep into Oran territory, designed to disrupt their supply lines, communications, and manufacturing capabilities. It would be a dangerous campaign, but the rewards could be decisive. "We'll hit them where it hurts the most," Chris said, his voice filled with determination. "And we'll make sure they remember why you don't mess with humanity." The crew of the Vengeance was eager to get back into the fight. They had tasted victory, and they were ready for more. The ship, now fully operational, was once again the spearhead of the human fleet. As the Vengeance prepared to jump to the first target, Chris addressed his crew one last time. The journey ahead would be long and fraught with danger, but they were ready. "This war isn't over," Chris said, his voice echoing through the ship. "But with every battle we win, We get one step closer to victory. We've shown the Orin what we're capable of, and now we're going to show them that humanity doesn't back down." The crew responded with a resounding cheer, their spirits high. The Vengeance jumped to warp, leading the fleet into enemy territory. The road to victory would be long and difficult, but Chris knew they had what it took to see it through. They had already defied the odds, and now they would finish what they started. Humanity's vengeance had only just begun.